Hey everybody, it's 2020. So we're having technical difficulties with getting our speaker on board here. Let me see if I can bring, I can. Tiffany, are you ready? All right, so Tiffany Brown is our Clatsop County Emergency Manager. I've been able to work very closely with her this year. As you can imagine, there have been a number of things that qualify as emergencies, and so I'm going to let her jump right into our presentation without any further ado, if that's okay. Do you want me to stay on the screen, Tiffany? Would that be helpful?
Why don't you? Were you going to
Okay.
give me some prompts?
Yep.
Or
Yep.
okay, let's do it that way.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about um, this emergency. I mean, this is clearly not what the department was intended for when it started, or was it? I mean, is a pandemic like square in your wheelhouse, or was this something that was like, okay, here's what's going on, it's an emergency, how do we adapt to it?
Well, our planning is described as all hazards planning, which means we're ready for everything. But the answer is yes and no. Yes, because we plan for everything, and yes, because we plan for pandemics. We talked about them prior to this, not unlike we talk about the Cascadia subduction zone. It's big, it'll be bad, it'll happen someday, and we continue to plan. You know, we always say in preparedness, if you're ready for one thing, you're ready for multiple things. So in that way, we were planning for it. Public health is certainly, if you talk to anyone that works in public health, they will tell you they've been planning for a pandemic, but it was imminent.
So what has been the role of emergency management during COVID?
So interestingly, because it was a very public health focused event, it started in public health. That happens a lot in the community. You know, we'll have a small outbreak of something really manageable somewhere, and public health manages that incident within their department, within their own resources. And that's true of any public works, public health, even a law enforcement event. Mostly we have the resources to handle those things. It's not until something gets bigger that emergency management typically gets involved, because a new need has arisen that the original team just doesn't have the bandwidth to handle. In this case, we came to the table early on to coordinate a community call. There was so much information, it was changing so rapidly, and public health was overwhelmed, as was the county manager's office. They were working on the policy piece, public health was working on the operational piece, and so we put together what some of you may have participated in. I know the chambers did a weekly cooperators call where we had a meeting just like this that for an hour, we had a regular agenda. People would hear from public health department. They would hear from my department about what we were doing, the public information officer, the county manager. And we did that, I don't know, David, for 4 or 5 months.
Right.
PPE distribution was something that we took on early in the incident, and it was really hard to find. That job has changed faces a lot. You all saw that. At the beginning, it was only essential workers. Then the definition of essential workers changed. There was nothing, and then we had something. There was confusion about masks. And so I'd say 5 months ago, the scarcity issues lifted. And we started getting more masks and supplies that we could distribute further than the medical community. And that's where things really started hopping for us. We got masks that we started distributing to the chambers and to the public through drive-throughs. And that environment is about to grow again with a lot of resources that we talked about getting a couple months ago. Things work slow in government. And with the increased rules that were laid down, especially last week.
Right. Excellent. So Tiffany, I want to say that those cooperator calls, I've been on hundreds of calls and conference calls and Zoom and all of that since this began. Very, very well run, but also extremely valuable. I mean, to have the people on the phone who were on the phone, learning exactly what was happening on the ground, what was going on, really the worst part of this from a business standpoint was that it was impossible to plan. And we didn't know what was coming next. We didn't know even what was happening now. The news was all over the place, and to have a source of right on the ground and have those people basically in the same room, if you will, was extraordinarily valuable. So thank you for organizing that. Thank you for running a great meeting. You ran one of the best ones that I'd been on. So
thank you for saying that. Sometimes you're on a call with 60 people, and when no one has questions, you're not sure how to read that. So I appreciate the feedback.
Right. So COVID has not been a normal emergency. I mean, I guess there is no normal emergency, but what have been the special lessons that have been learned from your department during COVID?
Well, I think it's reinforced a lesson we've always known, which is we never know what we're going to be doing in emergency management. We're there to sort of serve as connective tissue, fill in the gaps. And so it reinforced that lesson. I had no idea what a burn rate was for PPE 8 months ago. You could have asked me, I wouldn't have known. So it reinforced that notion that we know that that's what's expected of us in emergency management. I think one of the really positive things that we've learned is how we can engage with the business community. With FEMA as our mothership, we're really encouraged to plan and prepare in a whole community fashion, which lists a number of stakeholders and businesses at the forefront. We talk constantly about public-private partnership, but I think over the years that's become somewhat anecdotal. And I think this incident showed us a new way that could happen. Puka Morales, who's my assistant right now, is managing the PPE, as you know, David.
Right.
And I never would have imagined that our primary focus would be the business community as emergency management. You know, we're not doing the cooperators calls anymore. Our only existing role at this point, could change any day, is PPE distribution to the community, and that includes the businesses. And so I think it's not that we don't want to be planning ahead with businesses and understanding how to prepare for the next emergency. I'm just not sure we knew what that looked like. And what will it look like for the next one? I'm still not sure we know, but look at this. We never imagined this, engaging and being a liaison for those resources. It's been great, and it's opened my eyes about what innovation lies ahead for the next emergency or for the next opportunity.
Right. So right now, the product is PPE, right? It's masks and sanitizer and things like that. But it does sort of show that a distribution channel, a centralized way of getting things diffused throughout the community, is an important and difficult thing to do. So one can imagine that in the case of a tsunami or another storm or whatever the next emergency is, that there will be something that needed to get out into the community. Is that an enduring role for emergency management, do you think?
Yes, I think, I said our role changes a lot, but providing infrastructure and systems organization is a very constant role of emergency management. It's made me think about the next type of emergency, what it could be, and other systems I've seen in the communities. Here's one I'll mention. So our neighbors to the south in Lincoln County had a devastating wildfire. I went down for about a week. Donations management is often referred to as the disaster within the disaster in my field, because it comes on fast and furious, and the supply comes before the demand. And it turns out you need it down the road, but it's crazy. Not to mention the people that pop up and say, oh, donate here, we're going to help the fire. It made me think about how as a community would we create that infrastructure ahead of time so that when people showed up to say, hey, we want to donate some money, we say, oh, well, not unlike the PPE distribution stream. And I should explain for everyone in the meeting this morning, we have a storage with all of our PPE, but it has four distinct distribution channels. The first is the chambers, and that goes to the businesses. The second is cooperators, which is all of those people on the call and our local government agencies. The third is a public distribution, and did I say and the medical. Oh, The medical, look, we're not thinking of them now. Oh, I'm joking.
Good morning, Puka.
So anyway, I see donations in a very similar fashion, right? So the chamber situation was beautiful. Our just-in-time training in emergency management tells us, what do you already have in place that's already working that you could build upon? That was the chambers. What would it be if we had a wildfire and people were donating household items or food? Well, I think it would be Clatsop Community Action. But those are things, that's an example of something that would be really smart to get set up ahead of time. I feel like I got off onto the weeds, but did that
It does, and it's a really salient point, because as you say, what immediately happens is everybody wants to help, and we don't know, and so we start asking each other, where should we send money? Where should we go? And that money may be, or the supplies or whatever it is, it may be exactly what's needed, but if it's in small groups, if it's in small clumps, it's not efficiently delivered to the people who actually need it. And we've discovered that with something as simple as PPE this time. So that's been great. So what will change? How will emergency management be different once this pandemic's over? I mean, you've described one thing, is that you now realize that you're a channel for supplies and aid, but what else?
Well, I think if we're doing our job right, we always take the gaps and the lessons discovered in one emergency and apply them to the next. And there's always a lot of passion immediately following an event that really makes people want to get involved. The 2007 storm is a really good example of that. A number of people got their ham radio licenses. A recovery group was born of that. There were a number of things. We were lucky not to be affected by wildfire and some of the other things that happened, but recovery it's a big word. It's going to be bigger in the next year. And I think maybe our next step is to look at what a general recovery group would look like for a community. Recovery plans in advance are very high level and very vague, but I think we've all seen that you're looking for any piece of direction you can find when something breaks loose. And if we had some things in mind.
So, right. The $1 million question, Charlene asked it. What about the distribution of a vaccine? Will that be will you play any role in that? Is that appropriate? It feels like you have some experience now in getting things out there. Is that something that you're expecting to be part of?
I don't know. Maybe not, but maybe because it's such an issue, we stand up some communication piece like the cooperators call again to share the information with the schools and all of the entities. I won't be involved probably in the distribution of vaccines, but I think we all know something about what that's going to look like based on what we saw with PPE. I think the guidance will come very high level. It'll trickle down through the state and to the local, and there will be a hierarchy of how that's distributed early on. And it'll like PPE. Remember, it was only medical providers. And I think that maybe the distribution prioritization may not be unlike what we saw with the PPE.
Right. Okay, Charlene asked another question that I don't understand. She said, do we need a COAD or a long-term disaster recovery group? Did you expect softball question from Charlene today?
Yeah, she's my plant in the audience. So Charlene's asking about something called a COAD. And that is community organizations active in disaster. And yes, it would be a beautiful framework to start a community organization that plans in advance about how they come together after an emergency. Charlene's been talking to me about that for a long time. We've been waiting for the next event for people to be paying attention and looking where they can get involved. And so I think that's a great suggestion.
Is that different than CERT?
It totally is. COAD is a child of VOAD, which is Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. It is a national organization. It's mostly affiliated with churches. Certain churches have certain skill sets, as you might expect, and so you've got Baptists and Catholics and Mormons, and everyone sort of has their own piece of it. It varies by community. But when you look at that on a local level, you call it a COAD. And Charlene and I have talked for a long time about how there are churches that are already doing things, and that not unlike donation distribution and PPE distribution, having something in mind before that starts is a good idea.
Excellent. All right, last question, because we've got a little bit of networking that I want people still to be able to do. What about the blue sky days? We're hoping there are blue sky days ahead where there's no disaster going on, where the pandemic is over and everybody's feeling fat and happy. What happens to your department? Do you completely stand down? Or what's your work look like then?
So a big part of what we do is pre-planning for disasters, and every year we've got a couple of projects on the burner for pre-planning. 2 years ago, we did mass care planning. We figured out how many people we had to take care of and what that would look like. We're in the process of communications planning, of looking at all of our infrastructure. We just got a grant for fuel planning. But what we do every day, and I think what a lot of people associate us with, is outreach and education. Hey, let me come to your workplace and talk to you about how to get prepared. Come to this event that we've planned. And obviously, COVID's really put a damper on that. Hook and I have been looking at ways that we can expand, try to take what we do in person ordinarily into a virtual environment with videos and that kind of thing. But we have a number of projects online that we were working on when COVID occurred, and we've kind of brought those back, and we're getting used to the virtual environment.
Excellent. Okay, that's the last question I have for you. I do have an apology for you because I didn't explain to you, like I explained to everybody else, why I'm dressed like a giant elf. We are doing our Elf on the Shelf promotion. I'm doing the filming today, or the photo shoots today. So I will be dressed like a idiot all day long with my Elf on the Shelf outfit. So if anybody wants to be part of that, I think we might be able to squeeze one more in. Just get a hold of us real quick. We're going to go out and do that. Tiffany, thank you for being here today. Thank you for all that you've done during this and what you continue to do. I heard Puka there. Tell Puka thank you. She's a rock star too. Hi, Puka. So thank you for doing this, and thanks for what you've done. And if anybody has questions for Tiffany, you can route them through me, or you can go straight to County Emergency Management. Any numbers people need to know from you?
Just thanks so much for having us. Our main number is 503-325-8645. And we're doing, limited contact. The county offices are closed, but we've got a really good setup here at Camp Raylia. Also to encourage you to go to the county website and look at our web pages if you're interested in knowing more about what we do, and our Facebook page, which is really the active place that we keep people notified in real time. And again, David, thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. If you want to turn your camera off and your mic off, then I will do a little quick presentation here. All I need to let you guys know is that there's another Business After Hours coming on December 10th. Yes, Thursday, December 10th at 5:30 hours. Location to be determined, but it'll be another Remo platform event. So that'll be our last one of the year. This is our last chamber breakfast of the year. We do not do one in December. Try to just kind of take a break between Christmas and New Year's. So thank you all for being here this morning. I'm going to send it back to the tables. Make a friend, make some contacts out there, jump around. Don't forget you can go from table to table. Bless you all for being part of the chamber. And don't forget to say hi to Chris, who's a potential chamber member. He's out there somewhere. From Ash River Furniture. All right. See you guys in a minute.